I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even look at my phone right away. But in less than 60 seconds, my husband destroyed our marriage and accidentally handed me the perfect advantage dot. The soft vibration against the polished conference table was the only warning I got. I was mid-sentence, explaining finishes to a client whose contract alone was worth more than my husband's income over several years. I didn't reach for my phone immediately. Professional focus isn't something you turn on and off, it's trained. But the second vibration lingered longer. I slid the phone into my lap. The first alert was from my bank. Withdrawal notification, $68,000. The second message was shorter and colder. Flying to Dubai with Kayla. Appreciate the startup boost. Don't wait up. That casual tone. That single laugh at the end. 12 years reduced to a punchline. He hadn't just left. He had drained the fund I'd spent 2 years building, the money meant for my second studio. He took my future plans and turned them into a luxury trip with someone who wasn't his wife. I didn't react the way movies tell you to. No gasping. No scene. I looked up, smiled politely at my client, and said, "Excuse me for a moment. I need to handle a brief logistics issue." Inside the powder room, I locked the door and studied my reflection. No shaking hands. No tears. I waited for panic. It never came. Instead, something clicked into place. Before I tell you what I did next and how one careless mistake cost him, everything, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing who's part of this community. Back to the screen. The balance glowed red. $68,000. Jason knew exactly what that money was for. This wasn't an accident, it was sabotage. But Jason had always been better at spending money than understanding systems. I opened the transaction details. Standard transfer. Not a wire. I almost smiled. A wire clears instantly. A standard transfer takes time. He rushed. He clicked the wrong option. The money wasn't gone, it was suspended between accounts. I called the bank. Not as an angry spouse. As an executive solving a problem. "This is Eleanor Vance," I said calmly. "There's a transfer initiated from an unrecognized device. I did not authorize it. Flag the transaction and revoke secondary access immediately." The agent didn't hesitate. "That can be frozen right now. We'll open an investigation." "Please do," I replied. Step 1, complete. Jason wouldn't panic yet. He still believed he had a backup. We shared a home equity line of credit, $200,000. He always treated it like his personal safety net. What he forgot was that I handled the refinance. I was the primary administrator. I switched apps. The lender's dashboard loaded. Available credit, $200,000. Not for long. Jason was probably already on the way to the airport. In his head, he was picking hotel suites, imagining room service, celebrating on the house's credit. I opened the account controls. I didn't shut the line down. That would have taken paperwork, approvals time. Instead, I adjusted one number. Available limit, 0. Confirm. The page refreshed. Just like that, his financial safety net became a deadweight. He was flying toward one of the most expensive cities in the world with no access, no backup, and no idea. I set my phone down. Cold water ran over my wrist for 10 slow seconds. A grounding trick I learned years ago: reset the system, steady the mind. I dried my hands, reapplied my lipstick, a shade called Power Red, and met my own eyes in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't broken. She was focused. I unlocked the door and walked back into the showroom. Mrs. Sterling glanced up from the fabric samples. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. "Completely," I replied, calm and precise. "Now about the velvet drapes, I recommend midnight blue. It's decisive. She smiled, unaware that in less than 5 minutes, an entire illusion had collapsed somewhere between a taxi and an airport terminal. The irony? He wouldn't realize it until his card was declined for the first time. People later asked me how I stayed so composed. How someone could receive a message like that and not fall apart. They thought I was in shock. I wasn't. I was simply months ahead of him. You see, my marriage didn't end that afternoon in a restroom. It ended exactly 182 days earlier, on a Tuesday in November. I was on stage, accepting a regional design award. The biggest moment of my career. Crystal trophy in my hands, lights blinding, applause fading as I searched the front row for Jason. His seat was empty. 10 minutes earlier, he'd texted, "Client emergency. So proud of you." I believed it for about 5 minutes. Then, while the crowd settled, I opened Instagram. Not his profile, hers, Kayla the woman from his gym. A looping clip of 2 drinks clinking at a bar across town. In the background, unmistakable, was the jacket I had given him for his birthday. Caption, "Work hard, play harder." In that instant, something inside me went quiet. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Clarity. There's a moment when the mind stops seeing someone as a partner and starts seeing them as a risk. Standing there, holding that trophy, I understood something simple and final. Jason wasn't my husband anymore. He was a liability. And liabilities aren't argued with. They're managed. I drove home that night in silence. No confrontation. No dramatic scenes. Just decisions forming calm, calculated, inevitable. Instead, I opened my laptop. Not to cry. Not to rant. I created a new spreadsheet. I titled it Project Exit. For 6 months, I had been quietly building what I called a shadow ledger. It started as a coping mechanism, something to give structure to the suffocating reality of living beside someone who was no longer honest. Every time Jason dismissed my business, I transferred a fixed amount from our joint account into a high-yield trust he didn't know existed. I called it the tax. When he spent $1,200 on a networking dinner that was actually time with Kayla, I moved the same amount earned by me into that account. When he made jokes at social gatherings about how I played house for a living, I moved $5,000, slowly, quietly, intentionally. I wasn't hiding shared money. I was securing what was mine. By this morning, most of my liquid assets were already protected. The $68,000 he took. That wasn't my safety net. It was the decoy. I knew Jason well. He was impulsive. Confident without caution. And if you leave just enough money to look tempting, but not enough to trigger scrutiny, someone like him won't ask questions. I needed him to take it. Because personal betrayal becomes a conversation. But unauthorized withdrawals become documentation. By touching that money, he didn't escape. He created leverage. He thought he was leaving with everything. In reality, he was leaving a record. So no, I didn't cry when his message came through. You don't panic when the system works exactly as designed. 7 hours later, my phone rang. Jason's name lit up the screen. I was in my studio, surrounded by order fabric samples, stone finishes, quiet precision. The contrast between my calm and the chaos I knew he was experiencing was almost surreal. I let the first call go to voicemail. While he spiraled, I poured sparkling water and adjusted the lighting. The phone rang again. This time I answered. I didn't speak. "Eleanor," he snapped, voice tight, brittle. "Pick up." "I'm here," I said evenly. "The cards aren't working," he blurted. "None of them." The rental desk declined everything. Even the credit line. They cut the card. They actually cut it. "That sounds inconvenient," I replied. "Inconvenient?" His voice cracked. "I'm stuck. I have meetings. Fix this. Call the bank." "I can't," I said calmly. Why not? Because nothing went wrong. Silence followed, the kind where reality finally starts knocking. What did you do? He asked quietly. I protected my assets, I said. You withdrew money you weren't authorized to take. That was marriage money, he shouted. I'll take half of your business. I ended the call. I blocked the number. 3 minutes later, my phone rang again. His mother. Of course. She launched in immediately fear disguised as outrage. My son is stranded. He says you cut him off. How could you do this? I took a breath. This was where the old version of me would have explained, defended, apologized, but that version no longer existed. I understand, I said simply. That's it? She demanded. Not for long, I added, when she reminded me he was my husband. She called me cold, accused me of choosing work over family. Then came the demand. Send him money, now. Okay, I said. She paused. Does that mean you will? No, I replied. It means this call is over. I powered the phone down completely. Set it aside. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was solid, earned, final. For years I had confused endurance with strength. That night, I learned the difference. For years, I had managed their emotions. Smoothed egos. Cleaned up messes that weren't mine. That day, I stopped. Jason was overseas with no access to money, a partner who was quickly realizing the fantasy was over, and a mother who couldn't fix this one. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. One final email. To my attorney. Attachment. Dissolution of marriage subject line. Proceed immediately. Jason returned 48 hours later. Not to our house. He couldn't get inside. The locks and security codes had been changed the moment his flight left the runway. He ended up back in his childhood home guest room, old trophies, and the unmistakable feeling of regression. Desperation, however, tends to breed confidence without caution. 2 days later, a letter arrived from his attorney hired quickly, likely at the edge of his remaining credit. The demands were ambitious. Spousal support. Reinstatement into the marital home. And most impressively 50% ownership of Era Interiors. The argument? That his guidance and support had been instrumental in building my company. I read the letter in my attorney Julia's office. I didn't react. Julia glanced at me. I glanced back. That quiet smile, the kind you share when the outcome is already decided. He wants conflict, Julia said calmly. So we'll proceed accordingly. During discovery, the phase where facts replace assumptions, Julia reviewed the financial records line by line. That's when she found it. A loan application submitted 3 days before Jason's trip. A request to increase our home equity credit line from $200,000 to $350,000. Approved. Signed. Almost. Julia slid the document across the desk. Look at the signature, she said. Your E-loops. This one doesn't. She was right. It wasn't mine. The implication was immediate and serious. A falsified signature on a financial document meant Jason hadn't just been reckless. He'd crossed into territory that courts take very seriously. This changes everything, Julia said quietly. But I wasn't finished. In his demand letter, Jason had included a claim for lost income. He argued that my actions had caused him to miss a critical investment meeting in Dubai, one allegedly worth 6 figures. I laughed. What? Julia asked. The investor, I said. Who did he claim? She checked. Arthur Henderson. That explained everything. Arthur Henderson was married to Beatrix Henderson, my client, the woman whose home I had just redesigned. The woman I'd shared dinner with the night before Jason left. Jason had flown across the world to pitch a man whose household I was currently advising, without realizing it. Julia, I said slowly, I don't want a counterclaim. I leaned back. I want a response explaining exactly why that meeting was declined. And I want the documentation attached. Jason thought this was about money. He didn't realize it was about exposure. The mediation room smelled like polished wood and forced confidence. Jason was already seated when I entered, wearing the suit I'd bought him years earlier. He smiled when he saw me. Actually smiled. "Eleanor," he said casually. "Ready to settle this?" I didn't answer. I sat beside Julia and placed my phone face down on the table. Jason's attorney began confidently. 50-50 division of marital assets. No ongoing support in exchange for a buyout of business equity. Jason watched me closely. He was certain. Julia didn't argue. She slid a single black folder across the table. "We have a counter-proposal." Jason's attorney opened it. His expression changed instantly. The relaxed posture disappeared. Papers stopped moving. "What is this?" Jason asked, suddenly uncertain. Julia folded her hands. "Documentation," she said. That changes the conversation. And for the first time since I walked in, Jason didn't look confident. He looked careful. I reached for the folder. "That," I said, speaking for the first time, "is a certified handwriting analysis confirming the signature on the credit expansion application was not mine." Jason froze. "That document," I continued calmly, "was submitted to a federally regulated institution. Submitting false signatures isn't a misunderstanding, Jason. It's a serious offense." The color drained from his face. The confidence collapsed into panic. That was a mistake," he stammered. "I had permission. Implied permission. And beneath that," I said, nodding toward the second page, "is correspondence you should recognize." Jason's lawyer lifted the paper. It was a formal email from Arthur Henderson. The message was brief, direct, final. It stated that all current and future business with Jason's firm was terminated immediately due to concerns about integrity and misrepresentation related to a recent attempted meeting. Jason's hands began to shake. The paper rattled softly against the table. "You ruined my career," he whispered. "No," I replied evenly. "You did that yourself. I just stopped covering for you." Silence filled the room. Jason's attorney closed the folder and pushed it away slowly. "I can't defend this," he said flatly. "You withheld critical information." Julia leaned forward. "Here is our proposal." Her voice was precise. "You sign over your interest in the property today. You waive all claims to Era Interiors and any future earnings. You assume responsibility for the debt you created." She paused. "In return, this matter ends here." Jason looked at me. The arrogance was gone. So was the performance. "Please," he said quietly. "If I sign this, I have nothing." "You'll have closure," I replied. "Which is more than you've offered me for years." He stared at the pen. Then, with a shaking hand, he signed. The deed, the waiver, the exit. When he finished, he sank back into the chair. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked to the door. "Good luck, Jason," I said without turning around. Then I left. 6 months later, 6 months have passed since I walked out of that room. I'm standing in my living space now. It looks different. The first thing I did after the property was officially mine was repaint. We covered the dull beige he insisted on and replaced it with a deep emerald green. The furniture changed too. The house doesn't feel empty. It feels relieved. I don't hear from Jason anymore. Occasionally, I learn where he is through second-hand conversations. He moved back into his childhood home. Downsized everything else. And Kayla? She left a few weeks after the trip. Turns out ambition without stability gets old fast. This morning, I opened my laptop to approve contractor payments. I clicked into the account that had protected me for months. The label read, Tax. I stared at it for a moment. Then I renamed it. Expansion Fund. That money, the money he tried to take, is now the deposit on Era Interior's second location. A bright, industrial space downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows. I signed the lease tomorrow. I used to believe my role was to fix things, to absorb damage, to keep structures standing while someone else tested the limits. I thought love meant endurance. I was wrong. I looked down at the blueprints for the new studio, clean lines, solid foundations, no hidden weaknesses. Jason thought one message could dismantle my life. He forgot something important. He was just occupying space. I was the one who designed it. And this time, I'm building something that belongs entirely to me. If you've ever been the one holding everything together while someone else played innocent, leave a in the comments. And if you want the exact financial separation checklist I used before he even knew I was leaving, check the link in the bio.